looking to eliminate anything that's not working towards the goals that I'm looking to achieve. Like that's essentially the essence of it, um, which I think really ties into kind of your reasoning for choosing the word no. Really, the purpose behind why more people in general probably should use the word no is like what do I need to eliminate? That's really what it is. It's I only have a finite amount of time or amount of resources, and I have things that I want to accomplish in my life, in my business, and I have to choose what to say no to. I have to choose what to eliminate.
Hey guys, it's Kay and Tanner, and we are coming at you with another awesome topic today in business growth. And this is something that I struggle with, and many of us struggle with. And one of the things we can do with this struggle is to talk about it. And this is the art of saying no. And so I think that's something that we've all either come to that growth point in our business or are getting there, but there's a point where we have to start saying no. And that's actually a growth, I think. So I'm excited to dive in on this topic. How about you, Tanner?
The word no, it's like it's the in some ways the most used word, in some ways the least used word. It's almost like when we're kids, or if you have kids, I've got two young kids, so I hear this all the time. Like, no is just like the word that they know for everything, right? It's like, no, I'm not going to do this. No, 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 right? But then as we get older, it almost is like we have like kind of gotten that I don't beaten out of us. We don't say no to all the things that we probably should. And some of that, as you alluded to, could be because we're growing through things. It could be if we only have 24 hours in the day, so how do we choose to invest it, whether it's personal or business? And sometimes that means saying no to things that do seem like a good idea. But it is fascinating to see how challenging it can be for people to say no, especially as they grow kind of through their professional development and things like that. At what point, what stage did we stop saying no as if we were young kids?
That's a really great way to look at it. It's like they're fully, when they discover that first sense of independence and they're like, I can say no. I know what that means. And we kind of forget the meaning of it. We forget that no is a filter. And well, no is a word to help us. My word of the year, I picked it on New Year's. I always do a word of the year and a mantra, a phrase of the year. And this year, my word is no, which is, kind of a different way to look at picking your word of the year. But I thought, what is something that I want to be at top of mind that I know is an option for me if something is not a good fit? So I think helping folks get back to when to say no, when like when it's a benefit, or maybe it's a not a no, but a not now. Those are other ways that we can say no without being so finite.
Mm. It's I didn't necessarily pick a word for the year, but there was a statement that I wrote down as I was thinking through like my goals and things like that for the year, and it was around elimination, which is really just a different version of saying no, right? And I kind of thought of I'm constantly looking to eliminate anything that's not working towards the goals that I'm looking to achieve. Like that's essentially the essence of it, um, which I think really ties into kind of your reasoning for choosing the word no. Really, the purpose behind why more people in general probably should use the word no is like what do I need to eliminate? That's really what it is. It's I only have a finite amount of time or amount of resources, and I have things that I want to accomplish in my life, in my business, and I have to choose what to say no to. I have to choose what to eliminate. I can't remember who said. I'm sure it's several people have said something along these lines, but when you look at the most successful people in the world, it's not what they've said yes to. It's all the things that they've said no to, right? It's actually the most powerful thing that anyone who wants to be successful, however you define that, that word or that elimination of things is probably the most critical thing to focus on and figure out how to do it effectively.
I 100% feel that. And I feel like as we're growing, as you grow in business, you're gonna get more opportunities. You're going to get like it's especially when you're living in an abundance mindset. And as you grow, you have to think about what to say yes and what to say no to even more critically, or have that discernment of like, this is the vision, this is the mission of what we're building, what fits within that. And I think like some of the conversations we've had through Action Coach, through like tools and resources to help me say no or pick what is the right thing to choose. We've had some really great tools that you've taught me over the last few months too of how to do that in a way that's not scary, in a way that's like, oh my gosh, I'm saying no. This means that I can't have this thing. No, it's mean you're saying yes to what's for you. And that may in the first, like in the meantime, kind of look like, oh my gosh, I'm saying no to opportunity. What am I going to do? But really getting what's not for you out of the way will lead to the right path, will lead to the right opportunity.
Yeah. I'm curious if you could maybe elaborate on just a couple components of like having to say no, because I know we've had a couple different conversations, and sometimes it's being able to be very logical and say, well, here's two different options. This one logically makes more sense to spend more time on. I'm going to say no to the other thing, and we'll move forward, right? But then there's other situations that are maybe a little bit more emotionally charged,
Mhm.
whether that's personal things bleeding in, it's things you really are passionate about within the business, but different aspects of that it's a little bit harder to say no because there's emotions that are tied into this thing. How do you, or how have you kind of overcome that process and knowing that it's hard to make those choices? What's worked for you to be able to say no or choose, make a choice really in those types of situations where there is a little bit more emotion attached?
Oh, definitely. This is such a great question. And it's something that I feel like some days go better than others. A lot of the time, again, I've used this word before. I like to take a pause. I like, because if I'm in a heightened state of emotion, being understanding of that and being graceful of that and saying, okay, I'm here, this may not be the best time to choose. And so knowing like if I have a yes or no, like if somebody's like asking me something, or say you've got something coming up in business and you're not aligning with perspectives of other people who want to be a part of that experience or something of that nature, when emotions are tied to it, I like to take a pause. Maybe that means go for a walk, talk to a mentor, journal, get those emotions out. And then that kind of uncovers the reality, like what's really underneath and what is the best choice. 'Cause a lot of times it's just giving yourself, if time allows, a little bit of grace and a little bit of like, hey, I'm human. These emotions are existing. I'm not going to just shove them away because they're going to come back up. Let's maybe work through these and see where the pain point is, if that's something. And I would say tool belt tools for me, journaling, walking, conversations with people that are level headed and that are in my trusted circle. Those are where I go. If I know I'm not in a good headspace, I need to decompress that.
So let's take the maybe journaling and walking are very similar in terms of it, tell me if I'm wrong. This is me kind of thinking about how tactically how to do this. If I'm in the audience, I'm trying to figure out like, okay, great, need to journal about some of these things, or I need to take a walk or something like that. I imagine that during a walk, I know at least for me that tends to be almost a process that's very similar to journaling, where I'm really just like processing and thinking through, and I'm basically talking to myself as if I was writing things down on a page. So in that process, we can even take journaling as the primary example. If I'm someone that's struggling with this and I'm struggling with saying no and there's some emotion to it and I want to take up, all right, let's journal, let's write some thoughts down. Do you have a technique or a tactic? How do you approach that exercise that allows you to kind of process and think through? What does that look like for you?
What that looks like, there's two different ways I go about it, and I'm going to share like like kind of like my old method that I still use, and then a new method that I just recently started working with. The first one is I like to take some time and I either meditate or even some prayer or whatever that practice looks like for you. I like to just sit in silence and stillness for a moment. And then I get into the journal and I just have my pen in my journal and I usually do it in the same spot. Usually it's either out on my patio, that was at my old place. And then now it's like just in my bed. I just have my journal right there. And I just start brain dumping and writing it all down. And it doesn't have to come out eloquently. It just has to come out. And it's okay if it's messy. It's a place to just download the thoughts, just like going on a walk. It's like download of thoughts, like get it out. And then you can read it back and see what you're telling yourself. See what, read between the lines of your own thoughts. Sometimes it like there's, you can find something that's not directly in your surface of your mind that's like a hidden, like a deeper reason for something. Like, why is this a stress point? Why is this, why do you feel lack here? Why, those introspective thoughts are, it's sometimes easier when you read them back to you, to
Mm.
yourself. That's one method. Another method I recently started, and again, it's a caveat to this is like definitely uh just looking at this very objectively, is I did start using AI. I
Mm.
started going into ChatGPT and writing out what I'm going through and what I need to work through, and also asking it about like how are my thoughts in this. But I write very objectively there. I make sure it's not so emotionally charged. I just put the facts and kind of what I'm working through. And it gives you a lot of content back, and you can reflect on that. Again, take what works for you, leave the rest. Um, ChatGPT is a good tool. It may not be the right tool for everyone. That's okay. For me, I find it, again, it's just pretty much outlining my thoughts. Sometimes I ask it for solutions, and then it gives me a few options, and then I pick what's the best for me. Like maybe I do need to take a pause. Maybe I need to call somebody, maybe whatever it may be. But those are two tools. I use the like just the basic beautiful writing process as well as a more strategic approach utilizing AI.
Mm. I think that's a really cool way to think about it. So, I recently started journaling or just writing thoughts more often. It was not something that I was really big in. I would much rather be the guy that just goes for a walk, goes for a drive, and just like thinks about things. I love to kind of process different things in my head. Um, so this year, I kind of made a point. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to write every single, even if it's one sentence. I don't care. I'm going to do something that's going to put my thoughts on paper because I read this quote or heard this quote somewhere towards the end of last year, where like journaling is really the process of spending time with your own thoughts and consuming your own thoughts. That I think that was the actual word. Is we spend so much time consuming everybody else's thoughts and we probably don't spend enough time consuming our own thoughts. I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. I'm going to take that approach and think about it. Um, so I have been starting to write things down a little bit more, maybe do a little bit of journaling, and we'll go for a walk. But there's a few things that I think are fascinating. One, I want to mention the Chat GPT piece, and then kind of some ideas on mine. I love the idea of maybe using something like AI because I think in essence what you're doing is you're able to not just reflect but almost conversate so that
Mhm.
you're getting some triggering thoughts back that allow you to go a little bit deeper and if you and I had a conversation that's different than just either one of us thinking about things on our own, it's like you have the ability to do that without actually needing another person, which is actually really fascinating and might be like incredibly healthy if we think about it. So that's really cool. When I'm thinking about things I need to eliminate or directions that we need to take or things I need to say no to, and there is a little bit of emotion next to it, I tend to go really in two directions. The first one being asking the question, will this help me or hinder me from achieving my goals faster than I currently am? Sometimes that's a very clear cut yes or no answer. Sometimes I have to kind of think through that a little bit. And it's like, well, does this really help me? Does it really not? Like, let's get down to the basics of it and figure out if it's moving in the right direction. I realize it's a little bit more of a logical way to look at it. And then kind of the other question I tend to ask is like, what am I avoiding? What is the work that I'm avoiding? What's the conversation I'm avoiding? Because oftentimes all the things that we want to achieve is just on the other side of those difficult conversations, are the things that we're avoiding.
Oh, those are both powerful. I just wrote those down. I think those they ask like the very it puts it right in front of you, what needs to be done. And those are great questions to like maybe journal those out and then like write your thoughts because yeah, it's a really great approach and there's so many ways to doing it. I like the what you said too about the importance of doing it and sitting with your thoughts because oftentimes we're looking for external validation and we don't trust our inner thought, our inner like alignment with who we are and our everything from our values to our constitution, like internally. And we're always looking for like what the next thing is saying or what like Instagram. I go on Instagram and start scrolling, it's telling me all the things to do. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. So I think, yeah, it's having that introspective look and trusting yourself, you know who you are, and allowing yourself to make those decisions. I mean, obviously talk to trusted friends and mentors for big decisions or your spouse or whoever have that trusted unit of friends and supporters, however, also be able to trust yourself and know thyself is a phrase that I love to use and understanding how you work and how your nervous system is responding to um, say you have an opportunity. This is a new one I just learned is feel how your nervous system responds to an option, a yes or no. Does this like fire you up? Does this make you excited? Yes, it can be scary. It can be like a little nerve-wracking to do something big, but how is that? Is it like an excited, let's go for it. I'm excited to give this a try. Or is it more of a feeling of terror or like this isn't right or isn't aligning? Feel how your body responds to anything, especially when making big decisions, because it can really tell you a lot.
Yeah. I really like how you use the word align. So I think maybe I'll kind of bring home this conversation today on really the topic around what we call alignment, or really like alignment between what you're doing and the ultimate goals or dreams that you have, right? So I think a big component when it comes to what to say no to, I mean, at the end of the day, we're making choices. We're making choices that are either for or against things that we want out of our lives. If we're not clear on what those things are, if we don't know what direction that we actually want to go, then it doesn't really matter what path we take, right? We could say yes to everything, we could say no to everything. It's not going to matter because we have no clear sense of direction. That's why it's one of the number one cornerstone things we talk about in building a business is like, if you don't know where you want it to go, then it doesn't matter how you get there. Um, so this process of alignment, really sitting down and getting insane clarity on what are the things that like I want out of life. Like what if we're talking business, how does the business become a vehicle that allows me to have the life that I want? And I'm the only one that gets to determine what that looks like. But the clearer I can get on these are the things or the experiences or the relationships or the whatever that I want in my life, when that becomes clear, then I can make decisions on, is this the right thing? Is this moving me towards that particular goal? It makes it easier. Yes, there's still emotion, but it makes it easier to say, no to hanging out with some friends that I used to hang out with, because it's like, well, that's great, but that's not going to get me and put me on the path to achieve the things I actually want to do. But if I don't have that clarity, then it really doesn't matter if I say yes or no to it. So clarity of that goal, and the alignment between the actions that we take today and the things that the path that we're looking to take with that end outcome is super important. And it's why it's the number one first thing that we do with any new client that comes on board within, our coaching firm, as if we're not aligned with where you want to go, it's really difficult to build the path and the plan to get there. So I think that's a really big piece. Clarity of where you're headed, getting super clear on that and not shying away from it, I think is the most important thing that you can take away if you want to be a little bit more decisive and make decisions that you know that you can have confidence in.
100%. I absolutely love that. And kind of just like a closing thought on this is when it comes to saying no, it can be very difficult to do. However, if you look at when you have that, you said you're aligned in that purpose, you know what your goals are, you know where you want to go, saying no actually gets you there faster. And you look at what's on the other side of that no, that hard conversation that needs to happen, maybe, or saying no to something you really wanted to do for the greater good of where you're going. It's it shows you that the no isn't the end game. It's actually a beginning.
Mm,
We look at no as a beginning, it it helps us do it easier. It helps us say, okay, this might be hard now, this might be hard this week, this might be hard this month, but this decision is going to ultimately get me to where I'm going faster and get me away from what is not for me.
mm. I love that. Well, I think that that's a really good ending point for the conversation today. As always, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, share your thoughts. What's something that you've had to say no to recently? You know, share maybe one tactic or tool that you've had when you've had to say no in more of an emotionally charged situation. How did you handle it? What's one way that you're able to get around it? But share with us. This community of continuing to build within our businesses and create the lives that we want. The more we can kind of share each other's opinions, the faster we can all grow. So share that. Make sure that you continue to stay tuned in here. If there's any topics or anything else that you'd like to hear a little bit more about, share those with us. We're always looking to continue to improve and share things that are relevant to you. So with that, okay, this has been fun, and we'll catch you again next week.
Thank you.